Alright, let's just dive right in. Welcome to our rapid fire trivia explainer, where we are going to uncover the bizarre, adrenaline-fueled, and honestly, totally unexpected secret hobbies of America's commanders-in-chief. So get your mental scorecards ready, because today we are testing your history knowledge to see exactly how the people sitting in the Oval Office managed to blow off some steam. Let's kick things off with our very first trivia question. Which famously rugged president literally took a left hook to the eye while sparring with military aides down in the White House basement? Yep, it was Teddy Roosevelt. You know, as a sickly kid, he actually used boxing to build up his physical strength. But here's the crazy part. Even after that brutal hit detached his retina and left him permanently blind in that eye, he didn't just quit martial arts. No, he simply switched over to jiu-jitsu. And that perfectly kicks off round one, action and adrenaline. We're looking at the presidents who pushed their physical limits just to escape the Oval Office. Take George H.W. Bush, for example. His relationship with, well, falling from the sky began in a pretty terrifying way at age 20 when his Navy plane was shot down over the Pacific during World War II. But to conquer that massive trauma, he vowed he would jump again. And he did. He bravely completed solo skydives at age 72 and kept right on jumping at 75, 80, 85, and even for his 90th birthday. Now let's look at some serious thrill seekers who loved high-speed horsepower. Andrew Jackson actually built a legit racing stable right on the White House grounds, and he nearly ran over Martin Van Buren on the track. Then you've got Ulysses S. Grant, who was such a speed demon that he literally got arrested by a DC police officer for speeding in a horse-drawn carriage. And later on, Ronald Reagan used horseback riding to reconnect with his roots, heading out to his ranch where he enforced a super strict no politics rule. Alright, next trivia question for you. Which president was so obsessed with staying fit that the White House doctor had to invent an entirely new, grueling sport just for him? It was Herbert Hoover. He relentlessly played this game, which was appropriately named Hoover Ball, out on the lawn every single morning at 7 a.m. sharp. The rules were simple. You throw a heavy medicine ball over a net, and if the other team drops it, you score a point. Honestly, talk about a rigorous wake-up call. Keep those scores tallied because we are transitioning right into round two. The wonderfully weird. Think you know your history? Let's see. Who was essentially biohacking way before it was a trend by using freezing water before dawn to wake up his body and calm his nerves? The answer is John Quincy Adams. Every single morning, he would walk 2 miles, strip completely down, and jump straight into the Potomac River. Get this though, one time he actually had his clothes held hostage on the riverbank by a female journalist. She literally refused to leave until he agreed to give her an interview right then and there. You really can't make this stuff up. Okay, time for a lightning round Who Am I? Clue. Guess which modern president absolutely loved terrorizing his ranch guests by driving his convertible straight downhill into a lagoon? If you guessed LBJ, you nailed it. Lyndon B. Johnson owned this rare amphibious car that could drive on land and float on water, and he just loved pulling this prank, yelling that the brakes were out and plunging his absolutely panicked guests right into the Texas water just for a laugh. Presidential hobbies definitely took some incredibly unique forms over the years. I mean, look at these wonderfully weird historical flexes. You have George Washington importing rare Spanish jacks just to crossbreed giant super mules. Then there's Thomas Jefferson, who was so obsessed with paleontology that he tasked Lewis and Clark with finding prehistoric fossils, which led to him collecting over 300 mastodon bones. And James Garfield, well, he used to entertain dinner guests by answering questions ambidextrously. He literally write in Greek with one hand and Latin with the other, at the exact same time. 3. That is the number of times a day Calvin Coolidge secretly rode an electric mechanical horse in his bedroom. Now, why a mechanical horse? Simply because he was allergic to the real thing. His doctor really wanted him to get some exercise, so he brought in this bizarre contraption made by the guy who invented cornflakes, and Coolidge would just ride it 3 times a day. Alright, that brings us to round 3, vices and chillin' out. When it comes to free time, we see some total opposites in history. James Polk worked constantly. He actually thought leisure was a complete buzzkill and looked down on presidents having hobbies at all. But then you look at James Buchanan, who was the polar opposite. He just lived to eat, drink, and gossip the night away at dinner parties, all while the country outside was literally fracturing toward a civil war. 1.2 million. That massive number is exactly how many stamps Franklin D. Roosevelt collected. He started when he was just 8 years old, and this quiet, really methodical hobby became his primary way to wind down. It was how he managed the crushing, daily stress of the office during some of the absolute darkest years in our nation's history. Of course, golf is kind of the ultimate presidential escape. William Taft was our very first golfer-in-chief, really popularizing the sport. Then you had Woodrow Wilson, who was so obsessed he played over 1,000 rounds. He even painted his golf balls red so he could keep playing through snowstorms. Dwight Eisenhower literally declared war on the squirrels that were tearing up his putting green. And Donald Trump, who owns 17 courses himself, views the relaxed environment of the golf course as the perfect place for his art of the deal style negotiations. All right, here is our final trivia question for you. Which leader hosted a group known as the Ohio Gang to smoke, drink illegal Prohibition-era alcohol, and casually gamble away state property? That would be Warren G. Harding. He definitely took the weekly White House poker night to an almost illegal extreme, letting his stress out by actually gambling away expensive White House china with his cronies. And, modern presidents have absolutely kept these varied escapes alive. We're talking Richard Nixon bowling a 232 high score down in his secret underground alley, and Gerald Ford aggressively skiing the slopes of Vail. We all remember Bill Clinton's famous saxophone performance on Arsenio Hall, right? Plus, we've seen George W. Bush's bathtub self-portraits, Barack Obama converting a tennis court so he could shoot hoops as Barry Obama, and Joe Biden getting right behind the wheel of his 350 horsepower classic 1967 Corvette Stingray. There's a great quote about JFK. Being on the water wasn't just a hobby, it was freedom. And whether it was JFK escaping on a yacht that was fully equipped with Cold War communications, or Abraham Lincoln using his deep love of storytelling and humor to cope during the Civil War, the ultimate takeaway from this explainer is actually really simple. Behind the podiums, the policies, and all the politics, these were just regular people desperate for a momentary escape from the weight of the world. So tally up your final trivia score, and as we wrap up, let me leave you with this thought. If you were handed the keys to the White House today, along with all of its immense world on your shoulders pressure, what secret hobby would be your escape? How would you stay sane? It's a fun thing to think about. Thanks for joining this explainer and keep learning.